Hello everyone, and welcome back to Foreign Eyes on America. Around the world, people watch America with fascination, its freedom, its creativity, and its spirit. Today, we'll see how foreign media and millions of people view this remarkable nation. When Russian newspapers and defense analysts write about America's stealth fighters, their tone often reveals a mix of awe and anxiety. For decades, Moscow claimed that its air defense systems could counter any Western aircraft. Yet the appearance of the F-117 Nighthawk, the F-22 Raptor, and later the F-35 Lightning II, forced even Russia's proudest voices to admit that something had changed above their skies. Stealth, they realized, is not just about invisibility, it's about survival. American engineers mastered radar-absorbing materials, angular designs, and digital avionics that made planes nearly untouchable. During conflicts in the Balkans and the Middle East, Russian-made radars struggled to track the Nighthawk even when its location was known. The lesson was brutal: without stealth, even the fastest jet becomes a visible target. Russian media often calls the F-22 Raptor a ghost in the sky. In combat simulations, pilots report it as almost impossible to detect or lock onto. Even nationalistic commentators concede that the Raptor's blend of speed, stealth, and sensor fusion sets a standard no Russian aircraft has yet matched. The F-35, initially mocked in Moscow's headlines for delays and costs, has since earned another label: the flying computer. Its ability to merge data from satellites, drones, and ground stations into a single picture makes traditional formations obsolete. Behind the sarcasm lies an unspoken fear. During NATO's 1999 air campaign over Yugoslavia, one F-117 was shot down by old Soviet radar. Russia's press celebrated, but soon admitted it was a lucky exception. The rest of the stealth missions went untouched. Beneath the victory cheers was an uncomfortable truth: the technology they had built their defenses on was no longer enough. Today, Russia's own stealth project, the Su-57, flies in limited numbers, often showcased at airshows rather than battlefields. Even Russian reports quietly acknowledge its weaknesses: larger radar signature, fewer sensors, limited networking. In contrast, America's F-22 and F-35 fleets operate in coordinated systems, spanning continents, supported by satellites and global logistics no rival can replicate. What unsettles Moscow most is the psychological shift. Stealth fighters have erased the old rules of air power. Speed, altitude, and firepower once defined dominance; now, invisibility does. Russia's military writers admit that facing formations of F-22s or F-35s would stretch their defenses to breaking. The fear is no longer about losing battles, it's about losing control of the sky itself. Thus, Russian coverage of U.S. stealth is revealing, not because it praises America, but because it cannot ignore reality. Every article wrapped in sarcasm hides the same admission: America's stealth revolution has not only changed the balance of air power, it has reshaped how Russia perceives war. And in that uneasy silence between lines, one truth lingers: the shadow America casts in the sky still darkens Russia's horizon. Russian defense writers increasingly admit that the true danger of America's stealth fighters lies not in what can be seen, but in what cannot. Traditional air doctrine built on radar, visibility, and layered defenses simply collapses against aircraft designed to vanish. Stealth, to Moscow's analysts, represents not only a technological challenge, but a cultural one. Their strategy was built on detection, America's on disappearance. Russian journals often describe stealth as a weapon that turns billion-dollar radar networks into guessing games. You cannot shoot what you cannot see, one analyst confessed, echoing a growing frustration within Russia's defense community. Years of investment in radar supremacy mean little when American aircraft glide through the gaps unseen. In Syria, American F-22s quietly patrolled contested airspace, while official statements denied any confrontation. Multiple Russian sources later hinted that pilots were ordered to avoid contact. Stealth, they realized, gave America control of escalation. Without firing a shot, it was power expressed through absence, the authority of what could not be targeted. Another recurring theme is information integration. The F-35's ability to merge data from satellites, drones, and allied networks has been grudgingly acknowledged even in hostile media. As one Russian commentator put it, the battlefield picture now belongs to them. It was a rare admission that modern warfare is no longer about speed or firepower alone, but about who controls information. The Su-57, Russia's response to the F-22, is often presented as proof that Moscow is catching up. Yet independent analysts routinely highlight its limits: few aircraft built, transitional engines, fragile coatings, and a lack of global support infrastructure. Even sympathetic outlets concede that it cannot match the scale of America's F-35 program, which links thousands of jets across Allied air forces under one digital command web. Behind these comparisons lies an uncomfortable truth. America did not just build planes, it built an ecosystem. Stealth fighters operate within a global network of satellites, AWACS aircraft, refueling fleets, cyber operations, and logistics bases that no other nation possesses. Russian journalists often call this excessive spending, but their critique carries a hidden admission cost as capability. The U.S. can afford to innovate continuously because its industrial, financial, and military systems reinforce one another. Even in areas of traditional Russian pride, such as electronic warfare, cracks are showing. Commentators now concede that stealth aircraft are difficult to jam precisely because they are difficult to detect. Without reliable targeting data, jamming becomes guesswork. The very foundation of Russia's electronic warfare strategy erodes when the enemy remains invisible. Thus, the Russian response remains limited. They can design prototypes, stage parades, and issue bold declarations, but they cannot replicate the invisible empire America has built. The U.S. advantage is not a single aircraft or even a single technology. It is an architecture of dominance sustained by allies, money, and decades of experience. And beneath the criticism in Russian headlines lies a reluctant recognition. America's stealth power is not just unseen, it is unreachable. In recent years, Russian media has struggled to balance pride with reality in its coverage of American stealth power. On one hand, television commentators and defense journals point proudly to the Su-57 and upcoming Su-75, presenting them as proof that Russia remains competitive. On the other hand, even loyal analysts admit that bridging America's decades-long lead will require more than patriotic slogans. Stealth, they concede, is not merely a weapon, but a philosophy, a new way of fighting wars that Russia has yet to master. Some reports attempt to downplay the gap, suggesting that new radar technologies, artificial intelligence, or quantum sensors could soon expose stealth aircraft. Yet in the same pages, those same writers quietly acknowledge that such breakthroughs remain distant dreams. The United States, meanwhile, operates fleets of F-22s and F-35s today, supported by digital maintenance systems, constant software upgrades, and an alliance network that turns each jet into a node in a vast aerial web. It is this integration, this living ecosystem, that most clearly separates the two powers. The tone of Russian reporting has changed with time. Where early articles once dismissed stealth as Western propaganda, the language has softened, becoming almost reverent. Phrases like the standard of modern aviation and a challenge for generations now appear frequently in defense magazines. Even in denial, admiration seeps through. It is the reluctant respect of a rival who understands that American stealth is not a temporary advantage, but a defining reality of 21st century air power. For Russian pilots and planners, the challenge is as much psychological as technological. To enter a battle space where the enemy cannot be seen is to fly into uncertainty, and uncertainty erodes confidence. This invisible threat changes behavior before a single missile is fired. When F-22s patrolled Syrian airspace, their presence alone reshaped engagements. Russian aircraft reportedly avoided confrontation, not by order of weakness, but by instinctive caution. In that hesitation lies the true power of stealth. Russian outlets still insist that parity is possible, but their tone betrays quiet doubt. Stealth has become more than a tool of warfare, it is a symbol of how America thinks, builds, and fights. Every radar evading contour, every networked sensor, and every whisper quiet mission represents decades of disciplined innovation. It is not just technology, it is a doctrine of dominance through invisibility. In the end, Russian media's reluctant respect tells the story more clearly than any Western praise could. America's stealth fighters are not simply aircraft, they are instruments of a strategic philosophy that redefined the modern sky. As long as star-marked wings glide silently above contested horizons, the shadow of American innovation will continue to stretch across the world. Thank you for joining this exploration. In the next story, we will continue to uncover the truths hidden between the lines of history and power.